A blessed good morning to all of you out there. You are watching Agenda here on Signal TV channel 8 and 250, as well as live on Facebook, One News PH. And today we are going to start with a new week under the enhanced, extended, and re extended community quarantine in Metro Manila. In any case, you may have noticed our new setup, which I keep kicking around, but well, that's part of the game nowadays. Work from home, and you try to make your best with what you have and try to give as much as you can to the work and to the public. Now, for the headlines, let's get on with the news. The health department reports its second highest number of recoveries to date at 70 COVID 19 patients recovering. The highest recorded was last April 16 with 82 patients recovering. In total, we now have 862 recoveries in the Philippines. The number of cases is now at 7,579. We'll have a physician, a global veteran to explain that to us later. And sadly, the sad news is that we have breached the 500 number in terms of mortalities. We have lost 501 uh, Filipinos to COVID-19, and again, we pray for those who have been left behind, that the Lord would give you consolation and support you in this time of your grief. Now, meanwhile, hospitals continue to use the convalescent plasma therapy to treat COVID 19 patients, especially in severe cases. Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergeres said patients undergoing plasma therapy have shown continuous improvement in their medical condition. Next up, the Interior Department makes it clear that local government units no longer have the authority to change quarantine protocols in their areas of jurisdiction. Spokesperson Jonathan Malaya, Undersecretary Jonathan Malaya, explains it's now the task of the Interagency Task Force on Emerging Infectious Diseases, or IATF, to determine citywide or province-wide community quarantine protocols, whether it's the enhanced community quarantine or the more lenient, excuse me, general community quarantine. Now, the LGUs can only declare lockdowns or any other quarantine measure at the barangay level. So, all of that is now under the mandate of the DILG. Next, the COVID 19 pandemic has displaced over 230,000 overseas Filipino workers, or OFWs. And as such, they are seeking financial aid from the government. Here in the country, over 2 million workers have also been displaced. With this, the Labor Department has requested for a supplemental budget to help both the displaced OFWs and the local Filipino workers. The agency has disbursed 1.5 billion pesos of aid for OFWs, but this was only enough for 150,000 workers. Dole has also released more than 2.8 billion pesos to help formal and informal sector workers here in the country, but this fund only catered to over 600,000 workers. Speaking of catering to Filipino workers, Taiwan will be open to welcome Filipino OFWs next month. The Filipino Manpower Agencies accredited to Taiwan, or PhilMat, says that Taipei will resume the processing of Filipino working visas once the ECQ is lifted in the National Capital Region. PhilMat says there were over 3,000 workers hired last January but were unable to leave for Taiwan due to quarantine measures. The group also reported to the Philippine government that the Taiwan economy is vibrant and booming, with manufacturing plants in full operation. Back here in the Philippines, Senator Cynthia Villar is proposing to reopen labor intensive sectors to give a chance for the economy to better recover, while also giving back the poor and lower middle classes their means of livelihood. The senator recommends to open agriculture, manufacturing, and construction sectors. She says this will give employment and income to the workers of the said sectors who are usually paid on a no work, no pay basis. Villar made this suggestion as she said that the government must implement more realistic and sustainable measure. Finally, another senator, this time Senate President Tito Soto, made his voice heard on helping ease the burden for Filipinos during this time of pandemic. Soto was pertaining to the pending tax bills as he calls on the Finance Department not to press Congress in passing these bills. The Senate President says additional taxes will only add to the burden of the Filipinos and that now is not the time to impose such measures. Senator Ping Lacson also shares Soto's sentiments. The Finance Department, led by Secretary Carlos Dominguez III, has pushed for pending tax bills to get more funds in fighting the COVID pandemic. And that's most of the headlines on front page news for the Philippine Star. And now let's go on with the program where we do lots of interviews to get more information on what's happening on the ground. We have with us, and I hope the connection will be great this week, Dr. Susan Pineda-Mercado. She is a public health expert with over 30 years of experience. She also spent around 15 years with the World Health Organization. Doc Susie, magandang umaga sa iyo. You look great.
Magandang umaga, Sito. Good morning, everyone.
Okay, I hope you are staying healthy and staying well.
Yes, of course. We're all doing our best to stay safe.
Okay, I've been nagging my team to get me an expert like yourself because there are a lot of unanswered questions or poorly addressed matters as far as COVID-19 is concerned. But before I get into that, I just want to find out some inside information from you because I was told that you were part of the group that saw the president, met with the president, and gave advice to the president regarding COVID-19. Malaman lang po namin, ano po ba yung mga minungkahi ninyo? What did you personally, as a health expert, recommend to the president?
Well, to begin with, I could see from the very beginning that he was heavily burdened by this decision. He was really asking if we lift it now, how many people are going to die, how many people are going to get sick. So, meron talagang fear on his part that if he makes a mistake in the timing, that it would really be could be disastrous. Now, he was of course reassured by many of the experts there who were doing modeling that we had in fact flattened the curve. But I took a longer term view of this. My brief talk was really about the fact that COVID is not going to go away. This is here to stay, and we have to brace ourselves for what we call recurring outbreaks. As you may have heard in the news, Singapore, Korea, I mean, our colleagues in Hong Kong are preparing for a second wave in the winter. This is not going to go away. This is going to be part of our daily life. And I think, we really need to prepare the people to accept that and not think that when we lift this quarantine that it goes back to normal. It does not go back to normal. And we all have to prepare for a new world where we have to be constantly vigilant about COVID. But my recommendations were quite simple. One, I said, Mr. President, magkaroon man ng bakuna, hindi po tayo maaambunan yan. We're not going to be anywhere near the list of the top 50 countries that are going to get it because, as we've seen in other outbreaks, these vaccines will be hoarded by the countries that produce them and that can afford them. Secondly, I said we have to manufacture our own PPE because we've been begging for PPE. We did not prepare. And the third one is that we've got to have the laboratory support needed to fight any new outbreak or any new virus for that matter. Now, Sito, post 9/11, many countries invested on what we call high containment laboratories.
Mhm.
These are what we call biosafety level laboratories number 3, which is the mother of biosafety level number 2. So the reason why we weren't able to do a lot of testing was because we didn't have enough laboratories that were accredited to test for these viruses. And you can't develop those level 2 laboratories if you don't have enough supervisory level 3 laboratories. And all of these are under the ambit of what should have been, which we proposed a long time with Dr. Romualdez, a Philippine Centers for Disease Control. So I also talked about the fact that we continue this quarantine. Currently 1 out of 3 children are already stunted. If you continue to ration food, you could push half of all children. And that's an entire generation of kids into not being able to reach an appropriate height. So there are pregnancies without prenatal care. People are having heart attacks and they can't enter a hospital. There are a lot of other health considerations aside from COVID. So these are some of the things that I mentioned.
But that's interesting because that is actually the scenario that's beginning to play out. First, let me start with the elementary questions. Let me play the role of the ignorant here. Uh, there are many questions regarding the disease itself.
Yes.
Number one, let's address this question about the asymptomatic because
Sure.
people are saying, sinasabi nila, pag ikaw asymptomatic, number one, mas nakakahawa ka bago lumabas yung symptoms. Asymptomatic people are more contagious than symptomatic people, number one. Number two, the common presumption now is if you stay indoors, quarantined, uh, the COVID-19 should die a natural death or should progress into such a bad situation, you land in the hospital. So the isolation will define whether you are COVID-free or you are contaminated. Now, ang hindi nasasagot, yung bang asymptomatic after 14 days, hindi na contagious o contagious pa rin? Because, I mean, like hepatitis B or C or HIV, it's perpetual. The infected patient carries it and continues to be contagious because he's a carrier. But what about COVID-19? Do the asymptomatics end up eventually COVID-free or perpetual carrier ba sila?
Okay. First of all, Sito, you're asking very difficult questions, which I think I wish I could give you a straightforward yes and no on this, but let me just try to put it in context. Okay. What makes you contagious is the virus in your nose and your mouth.
Mhm.
So how we get the disease is through somebody coughing or sneezing on you with virus there in the nose and the mouth going into the air in the form of droplets. So if you're asymptomatic and you're not coughing or sneezing, it's highly likely that you've got a low viral load. You have
Okay.
some virus there, but you're not really transmitting it a lot. So I'm not sure if we can say that the asymptomatic is more contagious they're more contagious because you don't know, or they don't know that that they have the illness because they have no symptoms, and therefore they'll be less careful,
Okay.
right? But if someone's sneezing and coughing, they'll really put on a mask and they'll really avoid people and so on. And that could make them, in a way, less contagious, but actually, they're the ones who shed. They're really shedding.
Yeah.
So, in a sense, because you don't know, then you could be less careful and therefore more contagious. So, it's the context by which you talk about it. But
But
if we
isn't
yeah, go ahead.
but isn't it similar to measles? Children with measles, when they break out already with the spots itself, that is already past the peak. It's before they break out that they are actually very contagious.
Well, in measles, you're contagious 4 days before the fever or
Yeah,
cough or cold, right? And then 4 days after the lesions dry up, di ba, nagkakaroon ng mga brown
yeah.
patchy places yan sa face, sa katawan.
Yung bulutong mismo.
Yeah, they're actually still contagious.
Mhm.
So in the case of COVID, but we can't say that kids are most contagious, no, at that time. So it depends on what we're talking about. Like, is it about the amount of virus in the body and how much you can shed, or
Mhm.
is it because you don't know and therefore you're not careful? So
Okay.
yeah.
But the main question that I was trying to get at, symptomatic or asymptomatic, if you stay indoors, you're quarantined for 14 or 21 or 30 days even, uh, mawawala ba yun? Let's say you don't go into full-blown COVID, but you have it, will 14 or 21 or 30-day confinement get rid of COVID?
Well, as far as we know, 14 is a safe number.
Okay.
So as far as we know, okay. So right now we're saying if you stay home 14 days and you've got an infection, after that you should be okay. But that we were saying that earlier because we didn't have the benefit of um, better access to testing. But
Yeah.
I would say what one should do is after 14 days is to have another test.
Mhm.
And there's lots of debate among the scientists in the Philippines about the test because the tests are really imperfect. Even this swabbing, RT-PCR, some of our scientists are saying that you could miss one third of these. For those who use the rapid test, it could be 40%. But in my view, and one of my colleagues was saying this, it's an invisible enemy. Um, if sometimes you can see the enemy, then that's good enough. They're not seeing the enemy at all. So my take on the testing is that we should use it as much as we can. And if you have symptoms or you tested positive and you stayed home, and I was your doctor, I'd like to see another test. I'd like to see if you still have that virus in your throat,
Mhm.
or if you've got the antibody, take a rapid test. So I think, this is additional information. I think when we talk about testing, we have to tell our patients that none of it is conclusive. We have to look at it in relation to your clinical symptoms and what you're feeling. So you're right. If you stay home 14 days and you had a mild case, then the virus, you have overcome the virus. Now, can it still stay in your body?
Hmm.
Do not know. So we do not have a known level of what we call neutralization, a point in time where your body actually, you know, whacks the whole thing and
Yeah.
it never comes back. So we don't know that.
Okay. Now, going back to what you shared with the president and your perspective, uh, now there is a growing, I don't know what you call it. It's more than sentiment. I've been monitoring doctors and researchers who have been presenting on the internet their findings. And there's a number of physicians who are saying that we are getting myopic with COVID 19 to the point where hospitals are no longer functioning to service other diseases. Dumadating na sa punto na puro na lang tayo COVID-19, COVID-19. And I think it's borne out by the news, by the headlines, that A couple of people have already died because they were refused by hospitals. This was a woman bleeding. Another woman who was having post natal complications, etc., etc. Are we getting myopic with COVID-19 to the point where hospitals are not addressing other diseases? Like may mga nagsasabi, paano na yung kailangan mag-dialysis? Paano na yung mga may nararamdaman na sa puso, etc.?
Yeah, you're right, Sito, no? I think when we study this a year from now, we're going to see that the mortalities or the deaths from other conditions might be even higher for COVID in this period. Because we started off with a health system where the access was already difficult, especially for the poor.
Yes.
And you add on this layer now where, and this is, if we actually study it, people are already, saying that you can't get an appointment, you can't go to any hospital because of this fear. Now, one of my recommendations to the president was that every province and every city should have a COVID hospital, and everyone else becomes non-COVID. So we have to move into that mode. I was just in a conversation with Gap Legaspi at PGH last week, and we were talking about how he has to open his outpatient department on May 16th. And one of the things that they're looking at, which I think other hospitals must start thinking about, is operating outpatient satellite clinics in smaller hospitals that are not going to accept any COVID patients. So I think we made a bit of what I would say not a good judgment call, no, when we allowed all hospitals to take COVID patients. From the very beginning, there were some of us who were saying that you should really have COVID hospitals or infectious disease hospitals in the country. And the president took to that very quickly, and he said that the government hospitals, some of them need to be converted in the next few weeks into the COVID hospitals so that other hospitals will take the non-COVID cases. However, because in a place like Metro Manila, National Capital Region, anybody could be COVID. Everybody now who sees a patient has to use PPE. So our surgeons are saying, in the beginning, they operated on somebody who had no travel history, blah, blah, blah. And so what they had to do was they operated and realized later that it was a COVID patient, and then a doctor got sick or a doctor died. So this has been really very traumatic for the medical sector. And so I think the system now has to kick in. So there's one thing about the hospital doing its own thing, but right now the system has to be managed in such a way that you have a network of hospitals, a network of outpatient departments, and possibly a lot of use of telemedicine so that you decongest the hospitals, you make sure that people go to the right hospital, and you test people. And I think if the testing becomes better, if we get to a point where you can be tested point of care, and before you come into the hospital, they know if you have the antibody or have some immunity or not, then you're either managed in that hospital or you go to the COVID hospital. So these are the sort of things that need to happen. And in the absence of a vaccine, we just need to be better at diagnosis, whether that's clinical, testing, and get better at treatment. So there are a couple of things on treatment to see. We'll talk about that.
What would you suggest, Doc Susie? Because one option is, as you and your colleagues have mentioned, open up the outpatient services. But what would be better? Shouldn't we just put up field hospitals for COVID-19 patients, or, as you pointed out, assign one hospital per area and the rest open up for treatment? Kasi parang I can see here, you can hit two birds with one stone with the outpatient. If you are in the outpatient services, you get rapid testing so that on the spot, we know if you're COVID, and it protects our physicians and frontliners. uh, I'm just getting a lot of information overload here. So, anong mas mabuti? Outpatient and rapid testing combination, or just put up COVID-19 hospitals and only like PGH. PGH is a COVID-19 hospital, but it's also the hospital ng buong Pilipinas.
That's right. That's right. I mean, so let's look at it this way, Sito. Um, we are still in a sort of disaster mode. We're in a disaster mode. And in a disaster mode, like a war mode, PGH, of course, functions as your lead hospital, because it is the hospital that has the capability of defining how treatment should occur. And they're already doing that. We can talk about that shortly. What's the state of the art? How do you manage the patients? Because you can't leave it to everybody to figure out what needs to be done with COVID. As the science develops, see, they have a very strong research and training arm. So that's going to be their role as we are in disaster mode. But we have to move out of disaster mode. So field hospitals are okay for disaster mode, but at the end of the day, we need to have more hospitals. And I think we'll probably need to build new hospitals that are probably non-COVID
So
hospitals.
you don't have to convince me about that, Doc Susie. I have been fighting and campaigning for that for years because I've always said the heart center is congested, the lung center is
Yeah.
congested, etc. In any case, let me pick up on that term disaster.
Yeah.
You're the doctor,
Hmm.
medically speaking, are we really truly in a disaster mode if I ask Doc Susie Mercado to compare COVID-19 with cancer, with diabetes, with all heart ailment, etc.? Because it seems that if you study the statistics, we might discover that there are actually more people dying of other diseases right this minute than from COVID-19. And that pati nga yung issue of cases, no, there is a reported 7,579 cases. Now, is that figure saying that we have 7,579 patients in the hospital, or just people who are in various conditions of COVID-19?
Okay, so Sito, let me put it this way. Um, were in disaster mode. We still are a little bit in disaster mode, but I would say second week of March we were in disaster mode.
Okay.
Why? Because we didn't know what to do, and
Mhm.
the health system was overwhelmed. It was so overwhelmed that doctors died, and
Okay.
that's the problem with this virus, because we didn't know, because the health sector didn't know what to do. It went in, we were in crisis. So
Okay.
doctors were dying. We didn't have PPE. Nobody knew what to do. I mean, that was that very acute phase when the quarantine was put into place. A week before that was when it spread. And then when the quarantine went into place, then we could see that doctors were dying. That was our crisis mode. But we are now getting out of that particular mode. Now, as we learn how to manage the disease, we move out of crisis and move into what I would say a period of rehabilitation. No? From a humanitarian point of view, you're in acute phase, everything is overwhelmed, and therefore you need to operate in a disaster mode. But we're now slowly moving into a period where we know what to do. We just need the resources to do better. Now, speaking of other diseases, I mean, Sito, last year, 1,400 people died of dengue. 70 people die every day of tuberculosis. We have 200,000 teenage pregnancies, a year. Many of them are very, very problematic. The vaccination rates when we started were at 40 or 50%. So now all of that is now going down. If you
Mm.
think about tuberculosis, we have probably more than 500,000 cases untreated TB every year, and
Yes.
maybe an additional 200,000 every year, and they're just as contagious as COVID. But the difference is the health sector knows what to do about this, and it knows how to protect itself from these diseases. But
Mhm.
we did not know what to do with COVID. But I think now we do know.
Okay, so in effect, COVID has actually taught is teaching us once again and telling us to go back to all of the sanitary and how do you call it, the cleanliness protocol, because I think everybody in the Philippines just got too careless about cleanliness even in the hospital situation. And that's what we've learned from COVID, that you don't assume the patient is not contagious. You simply assume everybody is sick. Now, going back to my question regarding those cases, I know you're not the point person, but I'm just hoping you have some data. These 7,000 plus cases that keep uh, growing every day in terms of statistics, are these all COVID positive 19 patients in hospitals, or are they just positive in various degrees of the disease?
No, they're not. That's not no. Sito, as we move out of emergency pandemic mode and move into what we call the endemic phase, where we begin to accept that this is now going to be part of our life, we have to stop reporting the total number and start reporting the number of new cases. Because a lot of these 7,000, remember, 80% of all those who get COVID are going to get mild disease. And those who are going to die could be something between 3 to 5%. And maybe about 20% need hospitalization. As far as I know, about 3,000 of these are probably moderate. So about 50% of the number that you've just reported have been are in hospitals. So some of them may be gone out of the hospital already. So that's another thing, no? We
Mhm.
don't have that real time monitor of who's in the hospital and who's not in the hospital. But if those who are hospitalized, if that's about 3,000 people, then that just shows that we are still behind in terms of testing. But as far as I understand, we're ramping up our testing capability. And then, so what we should see is that the number of hospitalized should represent 20% of those who actually have the infection.
Okay, now you mentioned the word testing. There's now also a raging debate about testing and who should be tested, because I think the general policy now is to test those who are symptomatic and to test the frontliners. There is no expansion, and in the United States, in Spain, in Europe in general, it's simply impossible to test the entire population. So they're only getting a percentage of the population. What do you think should be the policy in the Philippines?
Well, definitely you need to test your frontliners.
Okay.
You don't want, because we've seen that the disease actually spreads a lot from people who have direct exposure to patients. And who are those people? Those are the frontliners. So definitely you want to test your frontliners. Definitely you want to test people who are symptomatic. But I'm telling you, Sito, many of my colleagues are saying that they see patients who are really clinically COVID, and they treat them and they actually get well, and throughout the whole process they're testing negative. So in fact, PhilHealth is going to be doing
Uh,
reimbursements of
Doc,
patients who are not tested COVID positive but who are clinically diagnosed as having COVID. Now, I would say I would add a third layer to that, to the number who are being tested, and we could test people who are in close contact with symptomatics. So people who have symptoms and then their household members,
yeah.
if we had the ability to do it, we should do that testing. Now, the private sector, understandably, and this is all over the world, would like to test all workers coming back. And that is not a bad idea, because the industries do not want to have one or two people who are working in the workplace who are spreading the disease. So there
Mm.
is huge need for testing in order to go back to normal. I think people need to understand this. This is not just on a whim that the private sector wants to test, that industries want to test. They want to protect the workforce. So that would be number 4 on the list. So the more testing capability we have, the better. And there are some countries that have done, different ways of doing this. You could actually do what we call zero prevalence testing, meaning you test a cohort or a group of people anonymously just to see if in that group you have any positive cases so that you could take more precautions.
Yeah, and okay, now here's the thing: you mentioned the flu, etc. Now, there's also a group in the United States. Actually, they're immunologists. They have 25 years experience, and they were saying it might shock all of us to discover that COVID-19 is not a killer that we are portraying it to be. Meaning, like you mentioned, tuberculosis kills a lot of people. HIV is infecting a lot of people, etc. What are your sentiments about how we have been portraying COVID-19 in the Philippines? Because, when you talk to guys like Joey Concepcion and some of the other businessmen, they're beginning to get ants in their pants, and they're beginning to feel like, hey, we're getting overreactive to COVID-19, and we need to put it in a proper perspective.
Well, we're all geniuses in hindsight, right? I mean, when this happened and you saw what was happening in China, of course, we were all hoping that it wouldn't come to us, but
Yeah.
it did, and it killed our doctors. It killed more than 20 of our best doctors.
Yes.
So this is the thing. Okay, so I think we can only learn from the past, and I would think as we gain perspective and as we gain more access to better technology to test and to treat COVID, ultimately this will become like any other disease. Ultimately, at this point in time, because the tests are so imperfect, as I said, we have to rely on a combination of a doctor's skill in diagnosis and the test. But Sito, some of my OB friends are saying, Susi, pag nanganganak yan, sumisigaw eh. 'Di ba? Eh kung COVID positive yun, di binuga na lahat yung droplets, and everyone in that delivery room where you can't have just one person, you probably need at least 2 or 3, right? Could get exposed. So, when we get the right perspective on this, because of better testing and better treatment, I think we will calm down. But we have to brace ourselves kasi alam natin walang sinisino itong sakit na to. Una, sabi nila, yung mga matatanda lang, yun lang may hypertension, may diabetes. We have children who died of COVID. No, we have young people. I was looking at data, for example, from Hawaii, where the bigger number of patients are in their 40s, not in their late age. So there's so much we don't understand about the disease that it's still very difficult to predict how it will play out. Now, but the difficulty is that it really can overwhelm the health system. And once you overwhelm the health system, everything can go haywire. So, part of everything that has been advised has been related to how do you keep the health system afloat and how strong is your health system. So, Sito, for example, PhilHealth and the University of the Philippines have just started a series of webinars on state-of-the-art clinical management.
Okay.
And our doctors in PGH are saying that compared to other countries, we learned very early in the outbreak that if you do early ventilation, you could actually push your patient into death.
Yes.
And so what they're doing now is they're giving what we call high flow nasal cannula oxygen. And then they keep on moving you around. So sometimes you're on your tummy, sometimes you're on your side, sometimes you're on your back. No, they're looking for sort of ways to not do the very aggressive ventilation that was done in the West. and they're getting good outcomes. And even the Chinese doctors were saying the same. Because when you see a patient who's not breathing well, your instinct as a doctor is to ventilate. And that
Yeah.
active ventilation, intubation, and so makes the patient gag, throws the virus into the air, and gets people infected. No, so sometimes the technology itself is it determines our behavior when in fact our wiser older doctors are saying, you know what, just keep that body afloat, help that patient get stronger, and that body will overcome the virus. So
Hmm.
PGH has so many ventilators. Dr. Legaspi was saying they're not even using half of them, and the
Exactly.
patients are
I,
live.
yeah,
Patients,
I actually wrote about that in my column today, and I
yeah,
said that the presidents were fighting all other presidents for ventilators,
yeah,
and now we thought they were game changers, only to discover that they're
yeah.
game enders.
Right. So again, as I said, we're all geniuses in hindsight. Nobody
Okay.
wanted. Nobody wanted. I mean, all the good intentions were there to be very aggressive with the use of ventilators, and it still has a very important place in management of COVID. But it is your sort of last resort, and the doctors are now very clear on when should you actually ventilate. No, parang
Okay.
even the use of the drugs is the same, no? So so we're
Yeah.
learning from our doctors here, because again, the context of China is very different, the context of the United States is very different, and that's why the role of the Philippine General Hospital is very important, because we as Filipinos need to figure this out on our own. We cannot rely on anyone, and no one is going to help us. We have to do this on our own.
Okay, just a final question, because I've also mentioned this in my column regarding in the Philippine Star, regarding going outdoors, because that is now going to be a debate, because before they said stay indoors, and even the Western countries were saying stay indoors, and then they realized, hey, okay pala yung magpaaraw. Okay pala yung makatikim ka ng hangin. But more importantly, we are now having mental health issues.
Yes.
I've been reading about suicides in Thailand, about sexual molestations in the US, people just going crazy because of the confinement. Itong issue ng magpagpapaaraw, and of course, observing physical distance, because it's a debate. Should people be allowed to just go out, given the fact that we have, I think, 2 million people living in slum areas, or squatters colonies there, like in cubicles na lang sa sobrang sikip, which would be, is there a compromise here para para mabawasan natin at yung mental health issue, and mapakinabangan yung pagpapaaraw, etc.
Yeah, well, Sito, I mean, I was also an early advocate of sunlight, because, staying indoors uh, will will deprive you of vitamin D, which you
Mhm.
get from which you produce as you are your body produces it when you're under the sun. And
Yes.
vitamin D is very protective against all respiratory illness. So I think, the interpretation of staying, it was stay home, not stay indoors. It's stay home, but not stay indoors. So I've always been saying, mali yung ginagawa ng mga condominium, that you can't leave your condominium unit. That's wrong. You should be able to go outside, get fresh air, walk around, because let's go back to the mode of transmission. This is not airborne. Therefore, if you go outside and walk around outside, and you're not near anyone and you don't touch anything, you're not going to get sick. Now, of course, the problem is the social control, right? How do
Yeah.
you prevent people from talking? Like, I was on a line in a supermarket, and nakapila lahat. And you see people, people in front of me took off their masks and started talking to each other like nothing was happening. So, it's like, I don't think people understand the mode of transmission that much. They've been told you stay home and just stay home. But they have to understand how they get it. And you can only get it from another human being. or from objects that another human being has.
I love how you put it. The instruction is to stay home, not
Yeah.
necessarily stay indoors.
No,
And
no, that was never it. That was never it. Kasi, Sito, wala ka nga COVID, may rickets ka nga. Magkakaroon ka ng vitamin D deficiency.
di bali kung rickets lang, kung may topak at magpakamatay,
Of course.
pase na.
Yes, and this is a very, very real problem. Domestic violence, people, yung naghihiwalay na nga yung mag-asawa. No, you need space. Now, you were talking about people who live in slums, and I brought this up also with the president. Sito, it's 1 out of 6 Filipinos live in slums. I mean, it is impossible. Like you're keeping them inside the prison if you're asking them to stay home. So how do we manage this? And over the long haul, okay, so what are the immediate solutions? Frankly, I don't know. I think the LGUs have to figure it out.
Can you just answer one last question, Doc Susie?
Sure.
Intrigue lang ako, and please, no, I hope our viewers don't judge me in this. No, it's really an innocent question, because the way COVID-19 was presented, it's highly communicable and it respects no one, etc. And yet, for some strange reason, I presumed, and I think a lot of people presume, we are going to have a national disaster because, as you pointed out, 1 out of 6 Filipinos live in the squatters or slums or in the poverty area. Why are we not seeing people falling like flies? If there is widespread contamination, meron ba silang acquired immunity na, herd immunity, or is it because their resistance, their immunity is so strong, being survivors?
Well, Sito, no, intuitively, we have Filipinos are strongly resistant to many diseases, but it doesn't mean we can't get them. No, we have exposure to many diseases, and therefore our immune systems are actually quite active. But that's not a reason for us to think that we can't get it. Now, this quarantine prevented infection in urban slums. Okay? So we were able to do this for a while. But it can still happen that you would have scores of people getting the illness once this is lifted. So we're not quite there yet. Kumbaga, we nipped it in the bud. We banned flights from China, and then we kept everyone indoors. Now, we will not be able to keep the airports closed forever. So you will have new reinfections that are imported, and there could be spreads in urban slums. And that's why this is probably a very, very good time to start decongesting Metro Manila. Bring all the government agencies out of Metro Manila, create the opportunities for work in the provinces, and just no more of this informal settlements.
Okay.
No, this is what we call an upstream solution, but there's no better time to do it than now.
Well, I'll have to leave it at that, Doc Susie. And kanina kung medyo napangiti ako when you talk about people who brought the disease from abroad, because that's actually, a joke among the less privileged Filipinos na hindi pulubi ang pinanggalingan ng sakit. Yung mga mayayaman, kanya yung mga mayayaman ang tinatamaan ng sakit. And I'm just sharing that thought of the of the people in the squatters colony, and kasi nakakausap ko naman sila. But in any case, I'm just really hoping that all of this tapers off, and that we not only flatten the curve, but we basically depress the curve. Thank you very much, Dr. Susie.
Thank you, Sito. Maraming salamat.
Okay, that's Dr. Susie Pineda-Mercado, and we will go for a quick break. When we come back, we will try to reach out to another governor, find out what's happening, and this time that would be the province of Quezon. We'll be back right away. Please stay tuned. Okay, you're back here on Agenda. I'm Cito Beltran, and you are watching us from Signal TV, channels 8 and 250, as well as the Facebook Live page of One News PH. And we'd just like to thank many of our viewers for sticking it out with us, and we will continue to upgrade our setup here and also how we present the news to you. But for now, puntahan naman natin ang kinikilalang gobernador ng lalawigan ng Quezon. We have with us Governor Danny Suarez. Governor, good morning sa inyo. Okay. Okay. I think they're still setting that up. Governor, good morning.
Gandang umaga rin sa iyo.
Okay, kamusta na po dyan sa Quezon? Mukhang medyo mahirap ang ating signal pero pilitin na lang natin. Kamusta naman po ang kalagayan ninyo dyan? Okay, I think our executive producer has decided to reconnect Governor Suarez because we also want to find out dahil may mga concerns dyan po sa Quezon, bakit sila nasali dun sa extended enhanced community quarantine, and we will try to find that out from Governor Danny Suarez. In the meantime, just as a review from what we discussed with Dr. Susie Pineda-Mercado, the issue actually, last thing we talked about is the sunlight, and stay at home and not stay indoors option. There is now a growing argument. It's actually become a global argument whether or not people should be allowed to exercise outdoors, to sunbathe. And if you recall, that became an issue here in Metro Manila, particularly dyan sa BGC. And it has become an issue even in the islands where some mayors, some governors, or some barangay officials don't allow people to go to the beach or get some sunlight. And yet, as Doc Susie pointed out, staying in the sunlight for at least 15 to 20 minutes will make sure that you have ample supply of vitamin D, which in turn is very important to boost your immune system, especially against pulmonary infections or mga sipon, ubo, etc. So the debate now is whether the door should be open. Of course, here in Metro Manila, we are looking at 2 weeks, maybe 2 weeks and a few days, and hopefully things will be relaxed. But it's still an issue whether or not it will be relaxed and whether we will be allowed. But as Doc Susie Mercado pointed out, this policy of not allowing residents of condominiums, even barangay. I mean, like here in Barangay Barrio Capitolio, where I live, the barangay captain and officials have closed all the gates except one. You are checked for your temperature, and generally, because it's residents only, we have more or less a secure situation. Although, of course, I think we've had 2 reported cases of COVID, but other than that, there have been no new cases. And the question is, should people be allowed to walk, to jog, to stand in the sun? And this is the debate now, because the problem is there is a growing number of domestic violence. And it's good that in the Philippines, the president has declared, the IATF, for that matter, has declared a ban on alcohol, on the sale and the consumption of alcohol in public. And that helps. But of course, in very tight quarters, and pag sinabing tight quarters, hindi po necessarily yung mga nasa squatter, ano? Condominium units, particularly here in the Makati area, center NCR, the condominium units are tiny. I have seen condominium units that are 35 square meter or 50 square meter. And if there are two or three or four of you living in that space, things get a bit testy. So we don't really know how people we will how people will manage that. And so there's an increase in domestic violence, and unfortunately all these problems with the economy is creating a lot of stress for those who have no money, no savings. So that's one of the things all of you out there really need to work on once COVID-19 ECQ is lifted and we go back to some mode of employment or business. You need to save money. Those who have cash in the bank, who are electronically connected, have managed to breeze through this situation. And even not just cash, people who had ample supplies, nag-ipon sila, meron sila laging isang sakong ng bigas kahit anong mangyari. And normally, most of you might say, oh, mga utak mayaman yan, para sa mayaman lang yan. Actually, many people who survived World War II, many people who survived martial law, many people who went through the personal experience of lack or want or deprivation, have come out of those experiences becoming what we normally now refer to as hoarders. Pag tiningnan ninyo yung bahay nila, meron silang mga delata lagi, meron sila laging isang sakong bigas, and it's not necessarily yung mga first class. No? When ECQ was first announced, my mental reaction was, okay, we need to buy mongo and giniling na mais or corn grit. And some of you may wonder, okay, mongo beans, I understand, gulay yan, hindi nabubulok yan. Pero giniling na mais, many of you young whippersnappers, wow, yung kayong mga millennials, hindi nyo alam na there was a time in the Philippines in the late 60s and the early 70s when we had severe rice shortages. In fact, it was so bad that many families were mixing corn with rice. And I can already see your reaction. Yuck, corn. But I challenge you, if you can actually get your hands on milled corn, giniling na mais, you wash it 3 times, you dry it, let it air dry for 20 minutes, and then you cook it the way you would cook rice. Just try a cup. You'd be surprised that the difference is not that great. And I've actually eaten that stuff. As a child, as a kid, I've tasted that. I've eaten it. And recently I tried it again. And you'd be it's no different from opening a can of corn and eating corn. So in any case, let's see. I don't know if we have a guest online. We have with us Assistant Secretary Joyce Niwane of the DSWD. ASEC Joyce, magandang umaga sa'yo. Hello, ASEC Joyce?
Yes, okay. Sir. Good morning.
Okay, good morning, ASEC Joyce. The reason I asked you... Hello?
Hello?
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah.
Okay, there's a slight delay. There is a slight delay, so hintayin lang tayo. Okay, first question, ASEC Joyce. Ano ang situation ngayon? I don't know. Gab, I don't know if we're... Asek Joyce Niwane.
Either me coming in Shopee or you coming in.
Okay, we can't seem to make that connection because the reason why we wanted Asek Joyce Niwane on the show is to give us a picture on the ground. Ano ang impact ng quarantine on the general population, particularly the poor sector? Have they actually seen cases of increased domestic violence, etc.?
Sorry, I can't hear you. You're coming in Shopee.
Okay, Gab, yeah, Joyce, can you hear me now?
You're coming in Shopee.
Okay, I'm coming in choppy. Do you have reports of domestic violence increasing? Okay, well, we're just going to have to let that one go for the time being. That, again, is the reminder that in the new normal, many of us will also have to invest in better internet connection, better internet platforms. Because, like I, for one, when we started out work from home broadcast, I basically relied on a portable Wi-Fi and service prepaid, and it became a concern. So we got PLDT fiber optic, and as you may have noticed with our connection with Doc Susie, it was very clear, it was crisp, and we sustained it. In other areas, particularly in the provinces, it can be a good thing, a bad thing, depending on the signal strength, your location, etc. So I would recommend to many of you, put that on your to-do list. I don't know if you can actually do it right now. It would be best. But put that on your to-do list. Make sure that once the COVID-19 pandemic or ECQ is lifted, get a better package for your internet, because you're going to be using that more often than you think. We'll go for a quick break and we'll just sort out our connections with our guests. We'll be right back here on Agenda. Okay, welcome back to Agenda here on Signal TV, channels 8 and 250, and One News PH live on Facebook. Okay, we have back on the line Joyce Niwane. She is a DSWD Assistant Secretary, a seasoned social worker, and formerly worked at the Provincial Social Welfare and Development Office of the Provincial Government of Ifugao. Asek Joyce, good morning sa'yo.
Good morning, sir.
Okay, matanong ko lang, as far as you know, what is the situation regarding incidents of domestic violence and problems because people are required to stay at home or stay indoors?
Yes, actually, sir, we have anticipated such concerns. That's the reason why, in fact, this afternoon we're coordinating or collaborating with the free confidential psychosocial and psychosocial first aid support from our colleagues from the National Association of Social Workers Education Inc., where the people, we will be referring most of our clients to them while we are a little bit busy with the implementation of STOP. But of course, we have an office here still, and even in the regional offices, still ready to be able to assist our children and our women who are, there's a possibility of being abused because of the closed in, or the people are now staying at home. So we anticipated that this could happen. So we are really having now our guideline ready.
Okay.
And in fact, we had the meeting last week. Yes, yes, sir.
What is the situation? Dumadami ba yung mga kaso? Meron na bang mga kaso na nare-report? Have there been arrests, etc.?
We have received reports coming from the ground, and they are reported to our local social welfare and development offices. That because of the COVID-19 and the ECQ, most of our workers are a little bit confused with how they will be able to deal with this, except for telemeeting. And we have to still look on how our barangay officials will be able to address this cases, sir.
Hindi ba pwede or can't we not ask help from the Philippine National Police since they are already deployed in many of the barangays? Because if you just leave it to the standard operations, we cannot because people can't go out. But the police can go out, and I think a visit from a police officer is more effective than a visit from the barangay tanod or barangay secretary.
Yes, sir. We have considered that our police officers will be requested to assist. In fact, in normal times, they're always our partners in this aspect, sir.
Okay, what about mental health problems? Because the reason I reached out to your office, ASEC Niwane, is because I saw in the many news reports from abroad that Thailand, our neighbor in the area, in the region, has had a string of suicides resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic, particularly the quarantine and loss of work. Dito ba sa Pilipinas kamusta ang sitwasyon? Are we more resilient as a people, or have you also received reports of suicides or mental health issues?
So far, we did not receive any suicide concerns, but depression, yes. That's the reason why we really have to have open, confidential, psychosocial teleconferencing with these people who are already manifesting depression, and we have to reach out to them. But for suicide, I think we hope that we will not be able to go to that length, that we will be receiving news about our people committing suicide because they are already depressed due to the COVID-19 impact.
Okay, kamusta naman ang social amelioration program natin, because a lot of people from the squatters area or informal settlers, ang sinasabi nila, hindi COVID-19 ang papatay sa amin, gutom ang papatay sa amin. What is our saturation level as far as the social amelioration program is concerned?
Actually, sir, we have already transferred funds to the LGU. Around 99.8% of our funds of 100 billion is with our LGUs. So our LGUs now are really doing their best to be able to give the cash grant, which is between 5,000 to 8,000 pesos. And of course, the food packs are still regularly being distributed. The DSWD have augmented the LGUs, and it is the LGUs now who are the ones distributing this goods according to their priorities and according to their list.
Okay. Are you seeing a need for a second wave? Kasi I remember at one point they were saying that this SAP is only the first wave and there might be a second wave. Given that the president extended the community quarantine, particularly in the National Capital Region, does the DSWD, especially your office, see that you will be needing to do a second wave of assistance?
Yes, sir. We will have to do the second wave, but as discussed, maybe we will have to discuss first and ask the approval of the interagency task group on how to go about the ECQ, because there's a pronouncement that the ECQ will be limited to some areas, not the entire country anymore.
Okay.
But definitely, sir, there will be for
there will
this
be a second
coming month.
Okay.
Sorry, we will still have to discuss about that, sir.
Okay. Kamusta naman po ang ating mga tiga DSWD? You know, we always keep asking, what are you people doing? But I think it's only fair and proper that we also ask, how are the DSWD officials and staff faring under this situation?
Most of our people are really also the frontliners, and some of them are being threatened by some people. So some of our workers are really also in danger, not only from the COVID-19, but from elements that are doing their thing, which will hamper the implementation of this amelioration program. So, and we have to ask for our workers also to take care of themselves. So we have programs that will be able to help them. We are still requesting more PPE for our frontliners because they directly go down to the area and provide the assistance, including, of course, our security forces.
Okay, well, we really appreciate all the work that the Department of Social Welfare is doing, and we hope that you are all safe and stay healthy and stay strong. Maraming salamat, Asek Niwane.
Thank you very much, and we really also appreciate allowing us to share some of our views, and we hope that this COVID-19 will be out of us soon, and may the Lord always guide us and bless us and protect us all. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much,
opportunity.
Asek. Okay. That's the Asek Niwane of the DSWD, and sad to say, she just confirmed that, as expected, and it is not just in the Philippines, it's a global problem, even in the United States and some other European countries and in Asia, that domestic violence has increased, alcoholism has increased, and mental health cases have increased also. In fact, I mentioned during our discussion that there were issues in Thailand that were reported. There were, I think, like 6 cases of suicide because people got desperate. And we're just praying na tayo pong mga Pilipino, tayo manalig sa Panginoon, tibayan natin ang ating dibdib, and we will recover from all of this as one. Now, let's go to our news correspondent, JC Cosico, who's going to share with us the details of I think, the hero's burial for the slain member of the military, retired military. JC, good morning to you. Okay, JC Cosico, can you hear me? Okay, we seem to have a connection issue again. We did test that earlier. JC, one more try. Can you pick up? Okay, we can't hear you, JC. We're going to have to go back to you because JC covered I think, the burial of the slain military veteran Winston Ragos, who was shot by a member of the Philippine National Police during a confrontation or miscommunication, whatever you want to call it, in the course of this community quarantine. Now, as far as that is concerned, from what I understand, the NBI has looked into the case. They're investigating it, and they're also checking into allegations that certain protocols were violated by the Philippine National Police team on the ground. But it's actually gotten bigger than the story itself, because now there are even lawyers debating where the issue of whether the police officer who shot the retired military veteran can quote or can cite self-defense, etc. It's become a legal debate on Facebook, but we don't really know. We don't really know how all of that is going to go. Now, let's go back to JC again. JC Cosico, are you there? Okay, I can hear you now, JC.
Yes, Sito, yesterday, slain ex-soldier Winston Ragos was finally laid to rest at the libingan ng mga bayani. Siya nga yung dating soldier na nabaril nga ng isang police sa isang checkpoint sa Quezon City. Now, yesterday, he was given full military honors. Binigyan siya ng 21 gun salute dahil nga doon sa kanyang naging kontribusyon nga sa Army. Yesterday, talagang bumuhos yung emosyon ng kanyang pamilya, nung kanyang nanay na si Merlin at yung kanyang 76 years old na tiyahin na nagpalaki nga sa kanya. And almost all of them, yung kanilang mga family and relatives, they are wearing a white shirt na may mensahe nga na tumatawag ng hustisya dito nga sa pagkakamatay nga dito kay Winston Ragos. Sito.
Okay, I understand no less than the president has called for the matter to be investigated. And pumasok na yung NBI. Actually, pati na nga yung mga meron pumasok na sa Facebook at pinagpiestahan na yung legal defense ng Philippine National Police officer. Anong feedback sa'yo dyan?
Yes, Sito. Ang nangyari kasi, ito daw si ex-Corporal Ragos ay umakmang bubunot ng barel at tapos saka siya pinaputukan nitong si Police Master Sergeant Daniel Florendo Jr. Now, ang sinasabi ng mga police, ito ay self-defense, yung nangyari. Pero ang sinasabi naman ng mga witnesses doon sa nangyari ay wala naman daw dalang barel talaga itong si Florendo at suffer siya ng mental disorder which was also confirmed by the military kasi in 2017 he was discharged dahil nga doon sa kanyang post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, itong PNP ay nagkaroon na nga ng investigation on the incident and has filed homicide charges against Police Master Sergeant Florendo. And yung military ay nagkaroon din ng investigation dito and has also requested the NBI to also conduct an impartial investigation on this kasi sabi nila if the police wants to protect their police, kumbaga they also want to protect their soldiers. So ang kailangan gawin daw magkaroon ng third party investigation in this kasi yung isa sa mga dahilan kung bakit sila tumawag nga ng investigation sa NBI is dahil nga paiba-iba yung mga claims ng police, iba rin yung claims ng witness. So talagang para daw maharap nga yung truth ay kailangan na ng third-party investigator, which is the NBI. Sito.
Okay. So far, is there no video tape or kasi sa dami naman ng mga camera sa paligid, I assume that someone must have monitored yung alleged planting ng baril doon sa bag ni Ragos. What's happening with that angle? Because that came out in the papers consistently that the bag of Master Sergeant Ragos was taken by several PNP trainees, and when it was returned, meron ng bala, meron ng baril, at yung baril kinikil pa yung serial number.
Yes, sinasabi ng mga polis nga ay may na-discover na caliber 38 na pistol doon sa bag nitong si Winston Ragos after ngang mangyari yung incident. So ayun nga yung medyo nagkakatalo-talo ngayon kasi nga yung claim ng family nga ay and ng mga witnesses ay wala nga itong dalang barel. Ang tanging laman lamang daw noong bag nitong si Ragos ay yung mineral water at gamot. So ayun pa nga yung iimbestigahan sa ngayon sito. And questionable nga din daw sabi yung kasi dapat daw ang kumukuha lamang noong mga evidence ay itong mismong investigator nung mismong kaso or yung ko. Pero ang nangyari, itong si Police Master Sergeant Florendo mismo yung kumuha ng ebidensya. Sito.
Okay, yeah, because technically in that situation, only the scene of the crime operatives are allowed to touch the evidence, the direct evidence to the case. Now, last question ko, JC, paano naman napasok si COMELEC Commissioner Rowena Guanzon dyan sa issue na yan? Because pati nga sa Facebook, nakita ko na nag-aaway-away na yung mga iba-ibang kampo and they're not even related to the case. Do you have any idea how this developed? Okay, I don't know. I think we might have lost JC on that one. In any case, JC, if you can still hear me, I hope that you are all right, that you are doing well, and you please stay strong, stay safe, and stay healthy. Okay, I'm going to have to ask Gab to take it. Yeah, the guy I keep calling Gab is actually Gabriel Malyari, who is our executive direct producer, and he's the one controlling everything right now. He's kind of like the coach calling out the play because we are if I'm not mistaken, we are a 5-point setup, excluding our guests. I'm broadcasting here interviewing a guest somewhere that is being coordinated by our guest coordinator, Dijo, from the studio. And Gab is in his flat here in Mandaluyong. And we are broadcasting from Mandaluyong and then throwing it to Quezon City and then throwing it to the world. In any case, I just want to say something very, very special, and that would be happy birthday, Gabriel Malyari. Thank you for putting up with me. Thank you for staying cool, even with all of the glitches that happened because of the connectivity issue in the Philippines. Happy, happy birthday, Gab Malyari, because you're doing such a great job. In any case, we have a few minutes, and I just want to invite all our guests, to our viewers, to. Okay, wait a minute. I think we're going to get lucky. Gab just said that we could get in Governor Danny Suarez of province of Quezon. Governor, nadidinig mo ba ako?
Narinig kita.
Okay.
Magandang umaga sa iyo, Tito.
Good morning, Governor. Kamusta na po ba sa lalawigan ng Quezon? Kamusta ang kalagayan ng mamamayan nyo?
Ito ang situation namin ngayon, Tito. Out of 41 towns, 14 ang merong COVID at 27 zero. So dito sa 14, ang aming data ay meron kaming 53 na confirmed.
Okay, sir. Okay, I don't know if we lost that line, but that's disturbing. 14 towns in Quezon province have confirmed cases of COVID. Governor, are you there? Okay, medyo problema na po talaga yung connection natin. But as Governor Suarez was saying, 14 towns in the Quezon province have confirmed cases of COVID. I don't know if I understood what he meant, but he referred to 27-0, and it's like a score. I hope it's not 27 deaths, but I'll do my best to confirm that at a later date. We will find out what that 27-0 is all about, because that's quite disconcerting, because there ewan ko, what is it about the name Quezon? Kasi Quezon City mataas din, Quezon province mataas din. I don't know, but in any case, I'd like to invite our viewers to try and find my column for today in the Philippine Star, where I wrote about media lemmings and Rocky Balboa. And in short, it basically tells everyone that let's not just go with what the general idea, notion is. Yes, masama ang COVID-19. Yes, may problema tayo with COVID-19, but it's not the end of the world. And it is not the death of the economy like some people keep saying, because the assets are there, the people are there, the money is still in the system, and we simply just have to restart the engine. Kumbaga sa sasakyan, ang Pilipinas parang diesel. Kung minsan matatagalan kang paandarin, pero aandar yan, at pag umandar na, tuloy-tuloy. So please try to read my column in the Philippine Star. It's available online, and we're going to have to call it a day. We haven't had much luck with some of our guests, but I think you picked up a lot from Susie Mercado, from Asik Niwane, from JC Cosico. So thank you for joining us this morning. We hope that somehow we managed to give you useful information. Please stay safe, stay strong, and stay healthy. And may God bless all of you. I'm Cito Beltran, and that's Agenda for today.